Yeah, hi everyone. We are back again with another insider session for all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to today's session on From AI Pilots to Enterprise Scale, the operating model behind successful AI transformation. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Some of you joining us very early in the morning, and some of you very late. For those who joined us last week, our session on the Enterprise AI Transformation Framework, welcome back. In today's webinar, we are exploring how organization can assess AI readiness, identify capability gaps, and establish a structured foundation for enterprise AI transformation. Well, today we are taking a next step in that journey. Many organizations have already moved beyond experimentation and are investing in generative AI, agentic AI, automation, and business applications. Yet, despite these investments, many AI initiatives still struggle to scale beyond isolated pilots. Well, the challenge is no longer technology itself, and we all know that. We saw that, in fact, in our last webinar. If you've not seen that, do check out the recording, which is there in our website at the same time on our LinkedIn channels. We highlighted that it is about building the operating model that aligns strategy, governance, data, talent, processes, and measurement to deliver measurable business outcomes. Well, in today's session, we'll explore what separates successful enterprise AI programs from being stalled, the common barriers that organizations generally face, and how leaders can build a scalable, governance driven approach to AI transformation. Well, I'm delighted to introduce you today's speaker, Sanjeevi C. Ramchandran, Associate Vice President and Principal Advisor. We have Aaron Andrews, Associate Director and Principal Advisor. Along with them, we have Nikhilesh Nayak, again Associate Director and Principal Advisor. Together, they will share practical insights drawn from industry practices, enterprise research, executive advisory engagements, and real-world transformation experience. With that, that'll help you accelerate AI adoption with greater confidence. With that, the stage is yours, and over to you, Sanjeevi.
Thanks, Anish, and thanks everyone. So looking forward to the conversation like everyone. So Aaron, shall we?
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that's joining the webinar today and joining us in this conversation. And really, this conversation is about a shift in what's happening with the AI discussion. And what we've noticed over the last few years is many organizations have focused on experimentation, such as launching pilots, testing Gen AI tools, identifying the use cases, and encouraging teams to really explore what AI can do. And yes, that phase was very necessary to get a grounded understanding of AI and its capabilities. But for leadership teams, the question has now changed. And the question is really no longer, are we using AI? Because we found out that many people are actually taking advantage of these AI tools. But now the question is AI changing business performance in a measurable and repeatable way? And that distinction is important because AI adoption and AI value are really not the same thing. And so what I wanted to focus on here is clearly that the AI adoption has moved into the mainstream. And as I alluded to, many people are taking advantage of these easily accessible AI tools. However, many organizations are using AI in at least one business function. And that's really important. And the level of experimentation has accelerated significantly. So a lot of people adopted AI usage and just kind of played around with it for a while. But now organizations are really looking, how can we get the most out of AI? And this challenge is that broad adoption is not automatically translated into enterprise level value. For many organizations, AI activity is high, but measurable business impact remains limited or a lot of times inconsistent. And really, this is where leadership teams have to be very careful. A company may have dozens of AI pilots running across different departments, such as customer service and their software development, finance, HR, operations, and risk. And if you look at it on paper, this really looks like progress. Wow, we're seeing AI usage across these many different teams. But if those initiatives are not really tied to clear business outcomes or common data foundations, governance, adoption, and value tracking, then the organization may simply just be creating more complexity. For example, think of a bank. They've deployed generative AI across customer service, their risk analysis, and software development. And really, the value is not in the deployment itself, which is great to say, oh, look, we've pushed AI out to these different teams. But the value really only appears when customer resolution appears or loan processing becomes faster. Think about compliance review. It becomes more efficient, and developer productivity is measurable, and cost or revenue impact can be truly tracked. So the real issue is not AI usage. The real issue is whether AI is improving enterprise performance. So if we look at the bottom line here, AI adoption is not becoming mainstream, or is becoming mainstream, apologies, but enterprise value is still selective. And I really wanted to emphasize that. So yes, you see many people, AI adoption, using it all the time in their daily life for small little things. But when the enterprise wants to use it in a real measurable way, you've got to understand right now that enterprise value is still very selective inside of that. We go on to the next slide there. And what has happened and what we've seen is that this has really created this AI value gap. And what we're meaning here is that on one side, organizations are investing heavily in AI, launching more initiatives because they're starting to see potential, usage for AI or ways that they could leverage it. And on the other side, there are a smaller group that's able to convert those initiatives into scaled, measurable, and repeatable business value. However, the difference between the two groups is not simply across the better models or to better models or better tools. In most cases, the difference is how AI is managed, governed, funded, integrated, adopted, and measured. A simple retail example makes this clearer. So think about this. There's two retailers. Both are using AI for demanding the forecasting. The first retailer uses forecasts as an isolated insight. It improves the prediction, but pricing, inventory planning, supplier coordination, store execution continue to work in the old way. Now, a second retailer connects AI-driven demand forecasting into pricing decisions, inventory allocation, replenishment planning, supplier collaboration, and executing workflows. And in that case, AI is not just producing insight, it's changing the way the business truly operates. And this is where we see that value gap. One organization has AI outputs, the other has AI-enabled execution. This is why AI maturity is no longer just a technology capability, it's becoming management capability. On to the next slide, please. And what we're seeing here is that there's this investment versus this readiness. And what we mean by that is that investment is accelerating. Organizations are spending more on AI platforms, these Gen AI tools, data modernization efforts, automation, skills, and advisory support. But there's really a risk here. The risk is not underinvesting in AI. The risk is investing faster than the enterprise is ready to absorb and scale the investment. And this is what we see in many organizations. Most pilots are launched, more tools are introduced, and more teams start experimenting. These are all great things if you think about it on the surface of it. But then each team may use different data sources, different governance practices, different approval processes, and different vendors, and maybe even different success metrics. And then what happens? You really see this fragmentation that's occurring. So for example, say there's in manufacturing, predictive maintenance, procurement optimization, and quality inspection may all show promise as individual use cases if you look at them on the surface or apply those individually to those three areas. But when the organization tries to scale them together, the real challenge is that's where we see those surface. There's data inconsistencies, your ERP and your MES integration, process ownership, plant level adoption, model monitoring, compliance, and even the cost accountability. Now, without these foundations, AI does not reduce complexity, it just really amplifies it. So what we need to do is really take a step back, and we see that the pattern is clear. AI adoption is rising, AI investment is rising, but value realization remains inconsistent. And so the constraint is not only the model or the tool. Many models, many tools out there, and the constraint is the enterprise's operating the constraint is the enterprise operating model around AI, that wrapper around the AI, so to speak. And so organizations do not fail because every AI model is weak. They fail because they can't consistently move from this AI experimentation to truly having a governed, funded, integrated, adopted, and measured enterprise execution. And that's the core of theme of today's discussion, truly, is we'll look at why AI initiatives are failing to scale, what a scalable enterprise AI operating model should include, and then what practical barriers organizations face, how to assess the readiness, how to build a roadmap toward enterprise scale impact. And with all of that in mind, let me hand it over to Sanjeevi, where he'll go deeper into why these AI initiatives struggle to scale in practice.
Thanks, Aaron. That's a very relevant point, and we are going to really deep dive into this title because this is where the organizations need to practice caution. So in a lot of enterprise conversations today, if you look at it, AI has already entered the space, has already entered the organization in some form. It may be in customer service, finance, HR, IT, legal, sales, operations, technology, you name the department. Some of these initiatives are formally approved. Some are still being tested by individual teams. And in a few cases, leadership discovers a pilot only when someone proudly presents it in a review meeting. There is a lot happening in terms of AI. The energy is there. The intent is there. And in many organizations, even the investment is there. And with all of this around, the challenge starts only after the first pilot. And like everything else, a pilot works well in a controlled setting. The demo will go well. The first few users may like it. But moving beyond that initiative or moving that same initiative into daily business operations is a very, very different exercise. And that is exactly where many AI initiatives slow down. There are multitude of reasons. We look at a couple of them. The first reason for the AI initiatives slowing down is business alignment. Many initiatives actually start with a very good technology idea. Someone says, can we use AI here or can we automate this activity? And that is a useful starting point. But very quickly, this conversation has to move to the business outcome, right? What are we improving? Are we reducing cost, improving turnaround time, reducing risk, or improving customer experience, help the organization make better decisions, or improving productivity in a way which can be measured? Because in a demo, everything will look good. If not, many things will look good for that matter. The screen will look very neat. The response is quick. And everyone says this is very interesting. And for some time, it actually feels like the future has arrived. And as always, someone from finance gets up and asks, what is the benefit? And suddenly, this discussion becomes very focused. Because the question asked by the finance person is important. What is the benefit? If the value is unclear, the initiative may still remain impressive, but it becomes very difficult to justify as an enterprise investment. Having looked at that, the second reason is usually governance. Across large organizations, different teams often move at different speeds. One team selects one tool. There is another team who's using a different platform. And there is a team that works with one data source. And there is a different approval process being followed by another team. And for all we know, there may be another team speaking to a completely different vendor. So in the early stage, this creates momentum. But after some time, the leadership actually starts asking very practical questions. Who owns this use case and who approved the data being used? Who validates the output? And And if there is a risk that is coming up, who's responsible, and who will actually decide when what will go into production, and who has the authority to stop if it is moving in the wrong direction. Because no executive wants one more committee just for the sake of governance, right? Because calendars are already full enough. But without a common way of making these decisions, scaling becomes difficult and risk starts increasing quietly and consistently. The third reason we usually come across is data readiness, because this is where the pilots meet the real world. Let me repeat, this is where the pilots meet the real world. If you look at a pilot, right, the data can be prepared, cleaned, controlled, and packaged properly. But when you look at an actual business environment, data sits in multiple systems. Some of it is clean, some of it needs work, some of it is easy to access, and some of it requires approvals. There are some data that is available which has got clear meaning, and some data is fully understood only by the person who created that spreadsheet 3 years ago. And that person usually is either on leave or has moved to another department. Having said that, AI needs business context. It needs to understand the rules. It needs to understand the exceptions, approvals, customer commitments, pricing logic, compliance requirements, and for all that matters, the operating realities of the organization. Without this business context, the initiative may work in a neat pilot environment, but it struggles when it enters the real business environment. Let's move to the next reason, which is adoption. And this is a common subject across any implementation, leave alone AI. Many rollouts usually assume that once people get access to a tool, usage will follow. But people use a new capability only when they trust it, understand it, and see how it actually fits into their actual work, right? Where is the value? What is the value is something that they need to understand. And they need to know when to use it. They need to know when to challenge it. And they need to know what to do when the output looks wrong. And above all, they need clarity in terms of who remains accountable for the final decision. Otherwise, we all know what happens next, and it is very familiar for us. People will attend the training, appreciate the initiative, will say it is very useful, and then quietly go back to the old way of working. And in most enterprises, the old way of working has a very familiar name. It's called Excel, Microsoft Excel. So adoption has to be designed into the workflow. It has to become part of how work is assigned, reviewed, approved, monitored, measured, improved, scaled. You can keep going. And the other reason we see is value tracking. There are organizations that track activity very well. They will clearly know at any given point in time, they will have a clear idea in terms of how many pilots are running, how many users have access, how many use cases are in the pipeline, how many are in production, how many demos have been completed. All of this gives visibility. But leadership eventually wants to know what has changed in the business. Is there cost reduction? Is there cycle time improvement, quality improvement, risk reduction, customer experience improvement, decision-making speeds have improved, and is there improvement in terms of productivity that could be measured? This is where many organizations get caught in the pilot trap. The pilot trap is exactly where the organization has many promising initiatives, but no clear path to move them into scale. Ownership is unclear, governance varies by team, data readiness is uneven, integration is not planned early enough at all, and adoption is treated as an afterthought, and value measurement is weak. When you look at this organization from a distance, the organization will look very active. There will be dashboards, workshops, steering reviews, innovation updates, and positive stories. But when the leadership steps in and asks, what has actually changed in my business? The answer sometimes or most of the times are less clear. Okay. For me and for the analyst team at QKS Group, that is the difference between activity and maturity. AI scales when the organization has a repeatable way of taking the right ideas into business. selecting the right use cases, assigning clear ownership, putting practical governance around them, and connecting them to the right data, which is very important, making sure that AI is embedded into the workflows. And the organizations succeed when they help the users adopt them and measure the value properly. So to reiterate, most pilots can be made to work in a controlled environment. The real test comes in whether when we get to know whether they work with real users, real systems, real exceptions, real controls and accountability. This is the place where a lot of AI initiatives struggle. And this is why the operating model becomes so important. So now moving to the next slide. So let's touch upon the kind of shift that need to be there in terms of C-suite conversation, right? So I would like to build on the previous slide. Thanks, Anish. And once we understand why these, we looked at a multitude of reasons in terms of why these AI initiatives are struggling to scale, right? So now it's time for us to look at the next step in terms of how leadership should frame the AI conversation. In many organizations, the AI discussion starts with use cases in terms of the number of use cases identified, the number of pilots that are running, and how many are completed, how many are in the pipeline, which functions are participating. These are, yes, very important questions. This will give visibility. This will show that the organization is active. This will also help leadership understand what experimentation is happening. The reality is that over a period of time, this use case conversation has high chances of becoming fragmented, because there'll be one team who will use a use case for summarization. Another team may use it for, say, document review. Another may have something for forecasting, a service chatbot. One may have a coding assistant, and all of them may be valid. All of them may be interesting, but the question from the leadership is much bigger. Again, where is the business actually improving? And this is where we bring in the value stream lens. And it is very important, because a value stream is where an enterprise creates value, delivers, protects, and measures value. It is actually much closer to how the business actually runs. And when we connect AI to value streams, the discussion becomes much more practical for the C-suite, right? So let's take lead to cash as an example. The conversation here should not ideally stop at, do we have an AI tool for sales? Can we automate proposal creation? These are starting points. That's the difference. The question has to be, can AI improve revenue forecasting, pricing discipline, contract turnaround, sales productivity, and the quality of commercial decisions, right? And because for a business leader, the interest is not whether the sales team has one more tool, right? A lot of sales teams already have enough tools. They have enough dashboards. They have enough fields to update, not to mention the CRM. And if we give them one more system without improving the revenue process, they will politely thank us and then continue doing what they were already doing. The value comes when AI helps the organization move faster and more intelligently from opportunity to revenue. Let's take another example. Service to resolution. The same concept applies. A chatbot is a use case. Summarization is a use case. NBA is a use case. Next best action is a use case. The actual value stream question is, has AI helped me reduce resolution time? Can it improve triage? Can it support the agents with better context? Can it help reduce escalations? And can it improve customer experience? That is the level at which service leaders start paying attention. Because the goal is to improve how service is delivered, measured, and experienced by the customer with AI in service. Deploying AI itself is not a goal. And let's take cybersecurity, for example. The value stream is detect to respond. Okay. There may be use cases around, say, threat triage, alert summarization, investigation support, response automation, or even knowledge assistance for analysts. But the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, is ultimately looking at a different set of outcomes. For him or her, who's a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, the interest is going to be in terms of, can we detect faster? Can we prioritize better? Can we reduce alert fatigue? Can we improve response confidence? Can we reduce exposure? And can we create better audit trails? Can we is the kind of question the CISO is going to ask. Because for all we know, security teams already have enough alerts. Nobody in the security team likes to wake up and say, please give me more alerts. My day is too peaceful. That's not the value. The value is in helping teams respond faster and with better judgment. So across all these examples, the shift is quite important. Instead of looking at AI as a collection of individual use cases, leadership can actually look at the enterprise and ask which value streams matter most to our performance and where can AI materially help improve them, right? And that one shift, right? That one shift movement from AI being a collection of use cases to value stream will make the conversation much sharper. And it also helps with prioritization. Not, I'll tell you this very, very frankly, I mean, based on our experience, not every use case deserves the same attention, funding, or executive sponsorship. Some use cases are useful but small. Some are interesting but absolutely not urgent. Some are very attractive in a demo, but it's very difficult to scale. And some are directly connected to business performance. The value stream lens actually helps separate these categories. It also helps with the ownership. When AI gets attached to only to the use case, ownership can become unclear. The technology team may support it, the business team may use it, the data team may enable it, the risk team may review it, and finance may ask for the benefit. Everyone is involved, but the outcome can still become an orphan without a owner. And in our experience and in your experience, we have all seen that when it comes to large programs, um, this is the case. And many supporters, many contributors, many meetings, all of this will happen. And there'll be people gathering around these AI use cases. But when the business result has to be owned, you will see that everyone becomes very respectful of each other's boundaries. But when AI is attached to a value stream, accountability becomes clearer. Lead to cash has business ownership. Procure to pay has finance and procurement ownership. If you look at service to resolution, there will be clear service ownership. Detect to respond will have security ownership. Idea to product will have product and innovation ownership. This makes the AI discussion far more practical. And this is also helping organizations build shared capabilities instead of building one-off tools. If we take document intelligence as an example, okay, it may be useful in a contract review. It will help in invoice processing, claims handling, legal operations, etc. If each team builds it separately, the organization creates duplication. But if it is looked upon as a shared enterprise capability, it can be reused across value streams with better governance, better data controls, and better economics. This is when scale becomes possible. So for executives, this slide is really asking for three practical things. First, please prioritize AI where it can materially improve cycle time, cost, quality, risk, revenue, or customer experience. Second, please make one business leader accountable for each AI-enabled value stream. Otherwise, the program may remain active, but the outcome may not be owned strong enough. Third, please convert repeatable use cases into shared enterprise capabilities instead of building separate tools for every function. For me, this is the more mature C-suite conversation. AI should be connected to how the enterprise actually runs. Where do we generate revenue? Where do we serve customers? Where do we save cost? Where do we carry risk? Where do we make decisions? And how do we measure performance? And where do we measure performance? Once those questions are clear, AI prioritization suddenly becomes far more disciplined. And that is only when the discussion moves away from how many use cases do we have to which parts of the business can AI genuinely improve. That is the shift from use case activity to value stream transformation. So now let's look at the enterprise AI operating model. Nikhilesh, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sanjeevi. Now, it is safe to assume for me that all of you who have joined are either working in a firm or, you are acting as a decision maker for a firm that is either in an initial stage of AI adoption or, you have already implemented AI or, what you believe is you are utilizing AI at its mature stage. Well, till the conversation which we had, uh, we were highlighting issues which organizations are facing in terms of AI utilization, AI adoption, also realizing the full value from the adopted AI. Now, every organization has a plan to shift themselves from the testing or adoption phase to the mature implementation phase, but everyone is struggling with the question how to do it. uh, you know, till now we have heard three questions from Mr. Sanjeevi, where adoption, assigning the task to, or assigning ownership and segmentation of work and a proper governance factor are important. Adding to that, to give a proper model to everyone who is aiming to shift from AI adoption or AI testing phase to mature and govern utilization of AI across the enterprises, we at QKS Group have framed an enterprise AI operating model framework. Now, uh, most of the organizations do have AI empowered functions. They have AI for certain functions, or say of the certain department, or say one or two relevant department, but it is not sufficient to get a proper or a measurable value from the AI which they have implemented. To do that, we have framed a model which looks like this, where we have segmented how the business outcomes looks like, how the strategic control layer looks like, what are the factors that are important when it comes about execution, and the foundational enablers which are important for implementing AI. To make it simple for you, let's assume an organization. As you know, what we have learned as per the management lessons, the organization's hierarchical structure is divided into four segments: the top management, which comprises of C-suite executives; the second one, which comprises of VP, heads, directors; the third comprises of the executive layer, which actually enables or implements something, or gives a value driven output. The last layer is the layer which actually does the functions of whatever the target or goal for that organization is. Here, let's take an example of a banking firm. A bank firm which has already implemented AI functions for several of its functions. Functions such as, let's say, KYC review support, credit memo drafting, uh, document summarization, fraud alert triage, customer query automation, relationship managers, relationship management, and such other functions. Now, for the firm who is planning to implement AI at an enterprise level and achieve a maximum benefits from it, if we take a look at the top layer, the business outcome layer, where the C-suite executives are present. Now, if we take an example for, say, documentation processing, let's say KYC review, the top management layer will not ask the question like, have you achieved the documentation process? How fast you have completed the documentation process? Was AI really helpful? Their question will center around, has the customer onboarding time reduced? By implementation of AI, has it improved the quality and consistency of credit discussions? Has it reduced the fraud exposure, had it provided a proper insight to the person sitting and doing all of this work. Now, the questions which are asked by C-suite executives always revolve around revenue growth, productivity, customer experience, decision velocity, risk reduction, and resilience and automation. So, on a broader scale, the C-suite executives' questions will always center around whether whether AI should be scaled, or it should be scaled only if it improves enterprise outcomes, such as in this scenario of a banking firm, say onboarding speed, say credit quality. So QKS model has clearly differentiated the purpose behind implementation of AI for a C-suite executive, the kind of benefits that they will receive, and for this stage, the first principle of AI, which they should look for, is that every AI investment must be anchored to an enterprise outcome before it is scaled. Without this layer, AI remains an activity. But implementation of this layer, AI becomes a business performance lever. Moving towards the next stage, which is a strategic control layer. Um, Coming back to the banking example, and if I have to give a practical implementation solution, this layer determines which AI initiatives should be prioritized and how they should be governed. So if you take a look at the parameters which we have included into strategic control layer, the AI strategy and prioritization, the executive governance and decision rights, responsible AI, risk and compliance, value realization, and KPI management. So these are the factors that raises some important questions related to implementation of AI in the banking sector. A simple productivity assistant for relationship manager may be relatively low risk. The transaction of data which is getting transferred to this should may not be of that concern or of risk factor. But leadership team at this stage needs to define, who owns the portfolio, who approves which AI use case can move from pilot to production, who owns the business case, who owns the model risk. And, when we talk from that perspective, it is also important whether the AI is responsible, whether it is helping to draft a credit memo. In the scenario of banking, the bank needs to ensure that relationship managers and credit officers understand what AI contributed. The purpose here is not to remove the AI or remove the human from the processes. It is to make a perfect blend of AI with human to make sure that the ultimate value, or the purpose of implementing AI should be very clear. So the second principle from this stage is AI scale requires executive control, not just executive sponsorship. When we come to the third stage, which is the execution layer stage, uh, it talks about the parameters such as data foundation and business context, technology architecture and integration, process integration and workflow design, talent, change, and adoption. These are the parameters which, at the ground level, or I'll say at the execution, the actual implementation or execution of AI across the functions. It ensures that does AI extract and validate, the important data or documents in this scenario? Does it flag exceptions? Does the route a case to compliance? Whether the data is getting forwarded, or the circulation of data and the insights which are may or may not be AI empowered but required for making the AI a functioning excellent model to get a output, or say beneficial output. This layer ensures that uh, the adoption does not limit just to the training issue, but it gets operationalized. When I talk, or when I say the third principle, the principle that leaders need to assume or need to prioritize from this layer, is that AI must be operationalized into the enterprise and not act merely as a thing which is deployed in the enterprise, where people are not able to assume the value, adopt the value, or gain the practical thing from the value. The fourth layer, the foundational enabler layers, which comprises of several factors which acts at the ground level but are equally and crucially important. Factors such as operating cadence, security and controls, interoperability, partner ecosystem, and a continuous learning. So these parameters makes the fourth principle, which is AI scale requires institutional capability, not one-time implementation. And to sum up everything with the example that I took from the banking sector, strategic, the top management, the business outcome layer, it ensures that AI is tied to measurable enterprise value. The strategic control layer ensures AI is prioritized, governed, funded, risk-tiered, and measured. The third layer, the execution layer, it ensures AI is embedded into the data, system, workflows, and employee roles. While the foundational or the fourth layer ensures that AI can scale securely, repeatedly, and responsibly across business units, geographies, and value streams. So the organizations who are struggling from the issue or the main question who have is how many AI use cases do we have? This framework will lead these organizations towards the question of, do we have the operating model that turns AI into measurable business performance across the enterprise? Now, talking about the scenario where the operating model is placed and the AI is acting as a functional thing. Anish, can we move to the next slide, please? Now, there are certain things that organizations need to focus on to get the maximum benefits from the enterprise AI operating model. The first and the most important thing is generic AI. Organizations are implementing AI, the AI doing the functions, giving the output, but it is not utilizing the contextual parameters to understand the flow of data. So the organizations who are planning to implement AI operating model should focus more on making the data segmented, ready to use. The parameters which they should focus more on comprises of customer account and transaction history, product pricing, commercial logic, internal policies and operating procedures, regulatory compliance and risk rules, workflow states, approval and exceptions, and historical decisions and institutional knowledge. Apart from this, the another thing which people should focus on is the governance parameter, which Mr. Sanjeevi has already explained in detail. So moving towards the human factor, I would pass on this slide to Mr. Sanjeevi.
So this is more or less a summary in terms of everything that has been discussed so far, right? So we are looking at governance being the core and the most important part of any innovation, right? I mean, so without governance, the growth is either delayed, slowed down, or not even possible. And governance is the quality of governance that we have is actually directly proportional to the kind of AI or the kind of AI outcomes we are looking at, right? Because when you have weak governance, AI is going to suffer. There's going to be a lot of rework. There's going to be escalation. There's going to be shadow AI, and leadership are not going to get the benefit that they were looking out of getting AI implemented, right? And governance. I mean, when you look at governance, there is weak governance and there is strong governance, right? A proper governance starts with selecting the right kind of use cases and then make it as a shared responsibility or shared capability across the organization, and making sure that the model has specific checkpoints and that the output that's coming out of the system are validation or validated. And in terms of human oversight and escalation parts, governance is the one that's going to give us a lot of power in terms of making sure that we know which AI initiative is worth the investments, what we need to continue with, and what is the course correction that needs to be done. And strong governance on top of everything or above everything is going to help us avoid third-party AI, and it's going to protect us from shadow AI governance. I mean, that's what has been summarized in the slide in terms of approval, control, and assurance. Let's move to the next slide. Anish, can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
Agentic AI as something that is being looked upon by a lot of organizations across the globe as the next AI revolution. But if you look at the news articles that is being published across the market, right? So what you see that is in terms of control. Control is where the challenge is going to be. For example, recently there were two news items that were there in the market talking about Meta and Amazon cutting down the amount of agentic usage in the organization because of the commercials, right? And this is from the commercial side. Otherwise, AI also, when there is a movement or relocation, if may call it that, relocation of AI from being an advice into action, there is a lot of other parameters that needs to be addressed, which otherwise is going to take hit on the quality, security, and performance. You can see it from the slide that there's about 23% of organizations are currently focused on getting agentic AI implemented incrementally in the organization, and there are about 39% who's actively experimenting with the AI agents. And the leadership questions matter a lot here. It's not about what quantity, what amount, what volume of agentic AI is being implemented. The question is in terms of what value am I getting out of it, and who owns the agent, and do we have audit trials and control mechanism, track, measure, monitor, control? I mean, do we have that mechanism? And why is approval important, and how are the errors getting stopped? What is the resolution? What is the impact of that again on say in terms of cost reduction, risk reduction, improvement in customer experience, and other organizational goals? So moving to the next slide, Anish. Workforce readiness is the most underestimated barrier. I'm just going to read this slide aloud. Okay. AI transformation is actually connected directly with people, their roles, the use cases, or we call it the workflows, and in terms of the decision rights, right? And AI literacy is very important. The roles that are getting into the AI environment needs to be redefined or redesigned to adapt and contribute to the organizational goals that are anticipated to be an outcome of the AI implementation in the organization. And the adoption metrics has to be clear, and leadership capability on top of everything is very, very important. And we have given legal team as an example. So if you look at it, we can implement any number of systems in a legal setting where there are recommendations that is being given by the agents, and with a lot of history, background, and in terms of the training that they've undergone, the data is going to be quite a lot in terms of supporting or complementing what the lawyers are looking for. But unless the users of the system who are legal experts start trusting the outputs, this is not going to serve the purpose, right? And it's not about, we're reiterating, it's not about having the maximum number of AI tools. It's about what serves the purpose. So next slide, please, Anish. Aaron?
Thank you, Sanjeevi. And something that was highlighted here about the user adoption, the adoption of people or adoption of AI tools and so forth, that I like what Sanjeevi had pointed out earlier, is that there's no lack of AI tools being deployed across organizations, but if there's a lack of understanding of the tool's purpose or how to use it, then many people are going to go back to the way they've been working before, and the tool will not be used. And we're not going to see that value outcome that have been mentioning throughout this webinar today. And really, this leads to another barrier here, where there's this weak value measurement and there's this lack of ROI discipline, because many AI initiatives are still measured around activity. Yes, we deploy the tool. Yes, there's a lot of people that seem excited about it and want to use it, but then you may see this big drop off that happens as far as from a usage side, rather than what you're really seeing in a true business outcomes and measurable outcomes in that business impact. For example, organizations may track, how many people, like I said, are using the tool, the prompts submitted, how many pilots were launched, how accurate is the model. While yes, those things are important to understand and know, they're not really metrics that are useful for how an executive would be asking questions around the usage of these AI tools, and such questions as, hey, did we reduce the cost? Did it improve margins? Did it increase our throughput? Did it reduce any risk somewhere else? Did it improve our customer experience? And the questions go on and on. And this is really where leading organizations are becoming more disciplined. And the way they connect AI initiatives to measurable outcomes across the different teams and throughout the organization, such as their finance, their operations, customers, risk, workforce, and there's reusability dimensions that was mentioned earlier. And for example, here in good customer support, we've talked about chatbots. A weak measurement may approach it and say, wow, our chatbot had 50,000 interactions. Well, that seems like a huge volume, and a lot of people interacting with a chatbot. But really, the question should be, did the first contact resolution improve? Meaning, did they get their question answered on that very first, interaction with a chatbot, and then they moved on? They had what they needed. Did the average handling time come down? Did escalation volumes get reduced? Did customer satisfaction improve? Did cost per interaction decline? And so forth and so on. Those are the types of outcomes that enterprise leaders are really looking for, and that's really the difference between usage measurement, we talked about a moment ago, and value measurement. And the same applies in other functions. For example, in finance, AI should be, connect to forecast accuracy and closing cycle times, anomaly detection, even audit efficiency. In HR, it may connect to employee experience, that hiring cycle time, workforce planning. And if you think over in maybe software development, it may, connect to that cycle time through the development life cycle, and the quality of that outcomes, or release reliability, and any rework that may need to be done. The bottom line here is that there's this key principle that's underlying all of this. What gets funded must get measured, and what gets measured must tie back to true business value. And so when we think about all of those examples of viewing usage of tools and really what executives are looking to get the value out of it, and we look across organizations that are really making progress, we're seeing patterns that are emerging. And they're not treating AI as some isolated technology rollout. They really treat it as a business transformation program. And they're not leaving adoption to chance. As mentioned earlier, if it leads to frustration of usage and they don't understand how to use it, they're going to go back to an old way of working. Really, that can't leave that adoption to chance. And you really need to redesign the workflows, roles, accountability, and what's that process that's flowing throughout the organization of how that AI usage is being done. And they're not measuring only activity, they're really measuring the business outcomes. Think about all those questions that executives tend to ask and want to know about. And they're not going to scale every pilot. Some pilots are going to work, some won't. They may be great ideas, but they're just not maybe timely ideas. So to scale the use cases, they have to have clear ownership, readiness, risk controls, and measurable values that can be wrapped around that. And so with all of that in mind, I want to hand it back to Sanjeevi to discuss how organizations can really assess that readiness before they can scale.
Thanks, Aaron. I mean, you said it right. What cannot be measured cannot be improved or course corrected. Yeah, so that's a very valid point. And so this is next slide, Anish, please. Yeah, this is the one. Yes. And yeah, this is one of the very important slides because we have already spoken about why the pilot struggle, why the movement from use case to value streams is required, and why scaling AI needs more than enthusiasm, funding, and technology access. Because at some point, leadership needs a clear view of readiness, right? I mean, so sometimes the use case that is most ready for scale is not the one that gets prioritized. This is why readiness has to become an executive discipline. If we look at cybersecurity, most boards today, if you see, are very comfortable asking maturity questions in terms of the exposure, in terms of the control posture, in terms of residual risk, and the kind of investments that are required. The same maturity thinking is now needed for AI. So the readiness question has to be asked across multiple dimensions. The first one is going to be strategy, next is governance, next is data, and the fourth is technology, fifth is process, and sixth is talent. And last but not least is risk and value. Okay. And so the leadership should be aware that if the outcomes are measured in financial, operational, customer, workforce, and risk terms, this is where the leadership gets the clearest picture. Because if AI is improving cycle time and is actually improving quality, reducing exposure, improving customer experience, that has to be measured. When this data is available, when these are measured, right, the leadership, like I said during the beginning of this, leadership gets the clear picture. Otherwise, the organization will only know how many pilots they have, and they would never be able to understand what's the business value that has been created, right? So the same way organizations track cybersecurity, digital maturity, or compliance posture, they need a structured view for AI readiness, because AI scale should not depend on optimism. It should depend on evidence, readiness, ownership, control, and measurable value. That is the executive control point that this slide was talking about. Let's now get into the AI transformation readiness framework. This next, yeah. So what we are looking at now is the QKS AI transformation readiness framework being utilized by a multitude of organizations across the globe. Let me spend a few minutes on this slide because this is where the entire discussion we had actually comes together. This framework is our structured way of helping leadership answer very important questions, three very important questions. Where are we today? Where are the gaps? And what should we prioritize next? Because in most organizations, what we have seen is that AI ambition is already there. The board is interested, the team is interested, the business leaders are interested, business units are willing to participate, technology teams are moving, vendors are making proposals. There's a lot of experimentation going on. Movement is happening. The primary challenge is here is converting the movement into a managed transformation agenda. So let me now explain how to read this image that you see on the screen. At the base, you see the 7 capability pillars: strategy and leadership, data foundation, technology and infrastructure, process and workflow, people and culture, governance and value realization. These are the foundations of AI readiness. And so this framework looks at the full enterprise readiness picture and not only the technology layer. And above all, you see the transformation journey here. We have organized it into 3 broad movements: illuminate, design, and ignite. The first movement is illuminate. This is where QKS helps leadership create visibility. The first stage is diagnose under illuminate. Here we establish the readiness baseline. What does this mean? This means that we assess where your organization stands today across the 7 capability pillars. What AI initiatives are already running? Which ones are creating value? Where is data ready? Where is the governance weak? And where is adoption strong? Where is risk building up? Where is value not being measured? This is important because many organizations believe that they know their readiness. But when you speak to business, IT, data, risk, finance, and operations teams, you get very different answers, and which is normal. It will be like everybody is looking at the same elephant from a different side. So the value of readiness baseline is that it gives the leadership one common picture. There's no opinions, assumption, and enthusiasm. A structured view of your organization's current readiness is provided here. The second stage is align, which results in the transformation charter, because leadership needs alignment on direction, right? So because the current state is visible now leadership needs to know which value streams matter most, what business outcomes should AI support, who owns the agenda, what should be prioritized. And the transformation charter is all the more important because AI cannot scale as a collection of enthusiastic experiments or use cases. It needs shared executive direction. So illuminate is about visibility and alignment. The second movement is design. This is where QKS Group helps you convert executive intent into a practical transformation model. The third stage is architect, which creates the transformation blueprint, right? And the fourth stage is govern. This creates the governance playbook. This is very critical because as AI moves closer to business decisions and enterprise workflows, governance should not be an afterthought. The organization must have clarity in terms of decision rights, data access, model oversight, human review, risk controls, compliance, security, auditability, so on and so forth. And if the governance is too heavy, people will avoid it. If it is too loose, enterprise carries risk. So governance also has to be practical. So the design phase gives the organization the transformation blueprint and the governance playbook. It tells the leadership what needs to be built and how it will be governed. The third movement is ignite, where we are moving from planning to execution and scale. The fifth stage is execute. This creates the execution playbook. This is where the roadmap gets real. What initiative moves first? What are the milestones? Who owns the delivery? Where are the dependencies? How will adoption be driven? And how will business be tracked? This is exactly where we help the organizations get into the discipline, because between a good strategy discussion and an actual execution, there is always a very important place called reality. Reality has legacy systems, data gaps, budget cycles, resource constraints, process exceptions, and people who are already busy. So execution needs structure. The sixth stage is scale. This creates the transformation scorecard, which is the management view for leadership. The scorecard actually helps track which initiatives are creating value, where you are stuck, what capability gaps are improving, which remains open, which risks and gaps remain open, where adoption is progressing. So it has to be managed through evidence. Are we improving cycle time, cost, quality, risk, customer experience, reducing risk? And this is what the transformation scorecard helped the leadership to see. So if I simplify this framework, it moves in a very practical sequence. Illuminate tells us where we are and what we need to align around. Design tells us what we need to build and how we need to govern it. Ignite tells us how we execute, scale, and measure progress. So this is the end-to-end management system. And at the center, you see the QKS intelligence layer. This is where our market intelligence, content intelligence, benchmark intelligence, and decision intelligence come together. This is extremely important because organizations like yours do not need another generic AI discussion. You need outside-in perspective. You need to understand how your readiness compares, where the market is moving, what peers are prioritizing, and which risks are emerging, and which capabilities are becoming critical for scale. This is where QKS brings differentiated advisory value. We are not approaching this as a technology vendor. We are not saying that one platform will save AI transformation. Our role is to help you and your leadership make better transformation decisions. We bring the framework, the benchmark, the assessment discipline, the outside-in intelligence, and the advisory structure to help your organization understand what to prioritize, what to fix, what to scale, and how to govern the journey. So AI needs more than excitement. It needs a management system, which is what our framework provides. It takes AI from scattered ambition to structured readiness, and from readiness to design, from design to execution, and from execution to measurable transformation. For me, the message is very simple. AI ambition is easy to create. AI readiness has to be built, and AI scale has to be managed. This is exactly what the QKS AI transformation readiness framework is designed to support. Moving into the last slide, Anish. Next slide, please. Yes, I think this is the right slide to close the discussion because it brings the entire conversation into a very next practical step. Today, we have spoken about a clear shift in the market. AI is not about experimentation. Organizations are have already experimented, and many have already launched pilots. Many have already seen promising results in the selected areas. At QKS Group, our view is that the next step for leadership should not be about starting another wave of AI pilots. Your next step is to understand whether your enterprise is ready to scale AI responsibly, profitably, and repeatedly. This is why this 90-day execution plan is important. The first step is to inventory what already exists. The second step is to identify which initiatives are creating measurable business value. The third step is to select 3 to 5 value streams where AI can materially improve enterprise performance. And this is where the discussion becomes more executive-led instead of spreading effort across too many disconnected use cases. Your leadership can focus on the areas where AI can make a visible difference, right? And the fifth step is to assess readiness across strategy, data, governance, technology, talent, risk, and value. This is where the QKS AI transformation readiness benchmark becomes highly relevant. And the sixth step is to prioritize capability gaps and define a phased AI transformation roadmap, right? And this is where QKS Group supports organizations through a very practical advisory approach. Our objective is to help leadership build a roadmap that can actually guide investment, ownership, governance, and execution. And this is why we are inviting participating organizations, which means you, to take part in the complementary QKS AI transformation readiness benchmark. To repeat, please take part in the complementary QKS AI transformation readiness benchmark. And through this benchmark, you will receive a personalized readiness view, maturity insights across transformation dimensions, capability gap assessment, prioritized recommendations, and an advisory workshop tailored to your context. So the closing message is AI transformation will not be achieved by doing more AI activity. It will be achieved by building the enterprise capability to scale AI with confidence, control, and measurable business value. And this is what our benchmark is designed to support. Thank you once again for joining us today, and over to Anish.
Thank you, Sanjeevi, and thanks for mentioning regarding the assessment. To all those who've been joining us and listening to us, the assessment is readily available on our website. Like I said earlier, do visit www.qksgroup.com. You can check out our advisory sessions. Under there, we have AI transformation advisory assessment readily available for all of you. Do have a look at it. And as we conclude today's session, I'd like to sincerely thank all of you joining us and being a part of today's discussion. Today's conversation highlighted that successful AI transformation is not just about deploying pilots, but rather it's about building the right operating model to scale AI with governance, accountability, and measurable business value. We hope the insights shared to you today have provided a practical roadmap for moving forward from isolated initiatives to enterprise-wide AI adoption. A special thanks to our speakers today, Sanjeevi, Aaron, and Nikhilesh, for sharing your valuable expertise and practical perspectives on what it takes to successfully scale AI across the enterprise. And to all the attendees, thank you for your time and engagement. As we continue this AI transformation series, we invite all of you to join our upcoming webinar that is coming next week, which is titled more revolved around the BFSI industry, to be specific. It is titled as the AI transformation roadmap in BFSI, scaling AI within guardrails of governance and compliance. Taking place next week, and we will discuss how banks, insurers, and financial institutions scale AI responsibly while balancing governance, compliance, and business value. Do stay updated to our latest research, insights, and upcoming webinars. We look forward to having you all join us in a future session. Once again, thank you and have a great day, and to some of you, a great evening.
Thank you very much, Anish. Thanks, everyone.